Hello, my name is Rick Williams. I'm the Business Inclusion Manager for the City of Pittsburgh, Office of Mayor Peduto, Office of Equity. Welcome to the show called Inclusion Counts. Inclusion Counts is a show that educates, informs, and inspires minority women and veteran contractors across the state of Pennsylvania with a local focus. It's a monthly conversation with subject matter experts, government practitioners, and businesses that operate in this space every day. The goal of this program is to share resources, provide capacity building information, and to also provide contract opportunities for vendors in this region. Our first guest today is Dave Pinkosky, Business Opportunity Economic Development Specialist from the Small Business Administration. As mentioned in our last show, Dave is a recurring guest who will provide us federal program information and initiatives occurring in our region. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you, Rick. Very happy to be here. It's hard to believe we're on number 3 already. This is great.
Yeah, I mean, it's been moving forward and the show's really, starting to pick up. How are things going with the changes in, the pandemic and everything? How is it affecting the SBA right now in your work?
Yeah, well, things are still pretty interesting, relatively fluid, especially with some of the loan programs, the PPP forgiveness, and some of the EIDL things and stuff like that. But for now, we're business as usual. We're getting back into some of our more general contracting programs and certifications and trying to help people that want to explore that space a little more and get into the federal market. Because one of the things that, we noticed and we kind of mentioned before is federal contracting really wasn't negatively affected by the pandemic, which was great, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Our federal agencies still have to function at their highest level and their fullest capacity. Obviously our military doesn't just up and shut down just because the pandemic's going on and things like that. So yeah, we're still pretty much business as usual and trying to help people that are, looking to get into some of these other markets and maybe supplement their commercial sector sales that haven't been doing so well due to the pandemic with some of that federal sector work.
So how have the SBA performed in regards to giving awards to disadvantaged businesses?
Well, last year we actually had a really great year across all federal agencies. One of the things we do here at the SBA is to help the other federal entities meet their small business goals. And our overall federal small business goal is 23% for all federal agencies. And the federal government last year actually hit 26%, which for our small business clients was $132.9 billion that was set aside strictly for small business companies. Specifically with the minority disadvantaged business enterprises, those companies would fall under our 8A program, which is our small minority and disadvantaged business certification program. And we have a 5% annual contracting goal in that program. Last year, we actually doubled that goal, hit 10.29%, which was our highest ever for our firms in that, which equated to about $51.6 billion just for those companies. So it's something we're very passionate about, place a lot of emphasis on, not only all of our small businesses, but our small businesses that qualify for our socioeconomic designations. And last year, specifically with the minority firms in the 8A program, we had a banner year. We did really well.
So in talking about 8A, it provides guidance and supports the businesses. Can you kind of tell what's needed to be in the program and how you get in the program and how it operates over time? Because it's 8A, I'm assuming it's 8 years, correct?
Close. Yeah, the number 8 and the letter A, it's 8A. It's actually a 9-year program. 8A is the actual federal regulation that it falls under. So that's where the name comes from. So instead of, there's a lot of different acronyms out there. So instead of reinventing the wheel and coming up with some sort of other MWDBE acronym to confuse people even more about some of those, we just stick with the regulatory name. But it's basically an 8-year program. And in order to qualify for, or I'm sorry, a 9-year program, now you got me saying it, 9-year program. But in order to qualify, you have to be socially and economically disadvantaged. So you have to be a small business first and foremost, and the ownership of your small business, whether it's an individual or a group of individuals, they have to have 51% control and ownership of the company itself. And again, you have to be socially and economically disadvantaged. And what that means is a social disadvantage is you have to belong to, say, a minority group. You can be an African American, Hispanic American, Native American, what have you. Those people that belong to those socially disadvantaged groups that have traditionally been held back in business and in different things and different aspects of life automatically potentially qualify. But then the second piece of that is you have to be economically disadvantaged. So what that means is you have to have a personal net worth of less than $750,000. Your 3-year average income has to be $350,000 or less, and you can't have more than $6 million in total assets. So if you meet both of those criteria, then you could potentially qualify for the 8A program.
Do you know how many in Western Pennsylvania are registered under the 8A program?
Right now, we have 13 in our portfolio in Western PA, and that's for our 27 counties. The program is pretty tricky and can take some time to get into. So we have a lot of people that like to explore it. Probably the biggest things, though, the biggest barriers to entry we really see with it is just the fact of getting the paperwork together, and the actual submissions tend to be incomplete quite a bit. And one of the things on the federal side that's pretty tricky with our stuff, or at least something businesses need to be cognizant of, is all of our programs fall under federal regulations and federal laws. So sometimes companies, if they can't provide a certain document that's actually required by one of these federal regulations, they just kind of send in an incomplete application. So one of the things we try to do in conjunction with our procurement technical assistance center partners is to work with our clients before they actually get to the submission process to increase their chances of not having their application kicked back. So we have a lot of good quality companies that kind of look at the program, but they do get kind of put off sometimes by the amount of paperwork, but we do our best to streamline that for people, to try and get them into the program. But for right now, Western PA, we have 13. We probably have, though, another, I'd say 15 to 20 applications pending at this point. So there's always people looking at it, and at different, depending on where they are in the acquisition space and their business life cycle, whether or not it's a good fit. Another thing with 8A is typically you want to be a company that has at least 2 years of good quality sales history on the commercial sector. It's not a program for startups because you kind of mentioned that 9-year term requirement. One of the very unique things about the 8A program is that 9-year term limit. It's a true business development program. And once you're in 8A, you get access to all kinds of training and things like that to actually help your business grow. But the idea is at the end of that 9 years, you graduate from the program, and then you are ready and able to compete in the commercial sector, in the federal sector, without having to lean on the certification once you get to that level. So there's a lot that goes into it, but it's a tremendous program. It's probably actually my favorite socioeconomic program for that reason. Like I said, it really gets our small disadvantaged and minority businesses access to a lot of great resources and a lot of just quality trainings and things that enable them to really work on their business to bring them up to that level with everybody else.
What do you find the most challenges and obstacles for getting in the program? Because you mentioned that there was a number of incomplete applications, and you have to kind of rely on the PTACs to get them up and running. So, where do you see the most problems that exist?
Yeah, probably in overall just kind of business record keeping and management. It's kind of funny. One of the things I like to talk about in some of my outreach programs, especially when clients are first looking at government contracting and especially our certifications, is one of the very first things you want to do before you jump into anything on the federal sector or any other state or even local government contracting is really take a good hard look at your business. And one of the things I always talk about is the movie Dodgeball. I don't know if you've ever seen that with Vince Vaughn, Ben Stiller. It's probably from the early to mid 2000s, but Vince Vaughn owns a gym called Average Joe's Gym that's not doing real well. And it's getting foreclosed on by the bank. Bank examiner comes out, and Vince Vaughn's character, he owns the gym, takes the bank examiner to his office, and she says, "Oh, I need to see your business records." And he says, "Oh yeah, I call those keepers." And he opens up a closet, and all this boxes of stuff and garbage just fall out and go all over the place. And unfortunately, I've been on a lot of client visits in my life, where some businesses just sort of, toss their payroll records in a drawer. They don't keep accurate invoices. They can't prove, the hours worked in their business because they're not keeping good, detailed, quality payroll records and things like that. So just having your house in order can really go a long way before you even jump into the certifications. And especially when you get into these, if you get into a situation, when you're compiling your documents up front before you even apply, it really enables you to figure out, what you need, and do you have everything in order? Do you have an operating agreement? Do all your business licenses, are they all current and make sense? Like I said, the worst thing you can do is just sort of toss together what you think the bare minimum you can get away with is and send it into the review team, because they'll just kick it right back until you get all those documents squared away. So that's probably the biggest thing we see. There are a lot of good companies, if they would just take a little more time in focusing internally on their operations and really looking at their day-to-day business and how they conduct themselves, they'd be a lot more successful when they first apply for the programs, and they wouldn't have to wait so long to get into them.
Well, how long does it typically take to be
right around the 8A program, usually right around 60 to 90 days. Now, again, you can, that's the average for the most part. You can streamline that quite a bit. If you submit a good, complete application in the first time, I've seen them approved in as little as 25 days, 45 days. So, but for the average, for most clients, you're looking at right around 60 to 90.
Okay, so that's a good explanation of that. I'm quite sure that there's more involved with that as people kind of go through, and that's why you're there to kind of help them in the process. And we were prepping, the last couple days ago, and you were mentioning the hub zone, and with the hub zone creates an opportunity for businesses to open up with some level of support to certain selected areas across the country. Can you share with me and our listeners of how the area is designated for Hub Zone first, and then how does workforce development play a factor in the program?
Absolutely, Rick. Yeah, the Hub Zone program has been around since 1997, is when it was actually established by Congress. It launched in 1999. And this year in 2020 was an excellent, finally got around to getting some much needed, excellent updates for the program that it had really needed over the years. But the Hub Zone program itself, the Hub Zone stands for Historically Underutilized Business Zone. And as you mentioned, the idea behind the Hub Zone program is to help fuel small business economic growth in underutilized and underserved communities. And one of the things that goes into Hub Zone that's substantially different from our other socioeconomic programs is it's not an ownership-based program. Meaning with our women-owned program, the veteran program, and also the AA, the person applying for one of those programs has to have that status and maintain a 51% ownership and control for those certifications. With the Hub Zone certification, it's location-based. So the only requirement as far as ownership for Hub Zone is that the individual or individuals that own the company that are pursuing Hub Zone status have to be US citizens, and they have to be located in one of the designated Hub Zone census tracts you mentioned. Now, as far as how that is figured out and calculated, SBA headquarters, what they do is they use all kinds of information out there. They'll take a look at, if there's any military bases in the area. The census information is always critically important for the establishment of hub zones. They'll look at all kinds of just business statistics from the Department of Labor, employment, unemployment, things like that. And then they come up with those specially designated hub zone census tracts. And if your business is in one of those hub zone census tracts, and you can also show that 35% of your employees work and live in the hub zone, then you can actually pursue hub zone status. And what that'll do for you, that will give you preference for those socioeconomic contracts, those sole sources, and those set-asides through the hub zone program itself. And like I said, we're really excited this year because the Hub Zone program is the one socioeconomic program that the federal government has always had trouble meeting the goal. I mentioned how we are really happy with the 8A program and performance, how we doubled that goal. The Hub Zone program is a 3% contracting goal every year for our federal agencies, and we've never hit it. Last year, we were at about 2.28%, which was around $11.4 billion. But there were some problems with the program over the years. It had a lot of good things to it, but it definitely needed some work. So I'm really glad that some of these new things came out, for us to kind of be able to use the program.
Now, Dave, I want to kind of put a footnote before you go into some of the challenges of the operation of the program. Mm-hmm. How is a hub zone designated? How does the SBA choose these areas to create the hub zone?
Well, kind of like I said, they take all those different statistics that I mentioned as far as employment from the Department of Labor, the census. They'll take a look at the businesses in a particular area and all that sort of thing. And then they have a very detailed algorithm calculation they perform. I don't have the detailed breakdown in front of me, but they kind of plug it into their system. And then that's what kind of designates the hub zone census tracts throughout the entire US. And if you want to see the map, it's very easy. You can just go to Hub Zone Maps on the certified website. And I'm sure we can probably have the link posted if that would be okay, Rick. We can add that in where you can just go on there and plug in your business address and see if your company is located in a hub zone. But as far as the calculation itself, I don't have that in front of me, but it's all done at the headquarter level with a number of different resources and things that go into that calculation.
Now, do we have any hub zones in Allegheny County?
Oh, yeah. We have a number of hub zones throughout our 27 counties in our region and in Allegheny County. Pretty much all counties have some hub zones somewhere. Again, it's more like little pockets. It's hard to say like specifically a certain neighborhood is going to be a hub zone or isn't a hub zone. But the best thing to do would be to look at the map. But yes, we have a number of hub zone areas all across our footprint here in Western PA.
Okay. And then what's your role to the hub zone? I know that you're involved with the 8A, but how do you interface with that?
Kind of the same way as the 8A program. Our mission and goal is to try to help people streamline their application process. We do hub zone reviews just like we do 8A reviews to make sure that clients that are participating in these programs are getting their fair share of government contracts. We also do compliance reviews for both of those programs to make sure that the companies that are participating in those programs actually do qualify and continue to meet the eligibility requirements and everything to make sure those contracting dollars that are being awarded to them are going to people that actually qualify for the programs and the statuses. So we have a pretty big role as far as compliance and administrative and all that type of thing to make sure stuff is moving along as it should and being done properly.
Now, is there any interface between the 8A participants to Hub Zone, or no, there's not really any involvement in that space?
No, there's really no. Right. Yeah, there's really no leeway or no kind of reciprocity, I should say, between those two programs, because, again, they're looking at different things. Hub Zone is worried about business location and number of employees in those designated tracts, whereas 8A is based on the company's ownership. Now, you can qualify for as many socioeconomic programs as you are eligible for. So we actually have had some clients in the past, doesn't happen too often, but we have people occasionally that hit on all four of our major programs. They're Hub Zone, certified disabled, service disabled vet, certified in the 8A program, and also a women-owned certification. So, they actually have all four. But yeah, you can get all the programs you qualify for, but there's no real reciprocity necessarily between them. And one isn't necessarily dependent on the other.
Yeah, I mean, the Hub Zone sounds like a great program once you're in it. And it also helps the neighborhood and also hires people locally. From those particular communities that are designated from the SBA. So that's a great thing. Hopefully that'll continue and it'll be more successful. Got to kind of move along, Dave. The other programs that you mentioned will probably bring you back and talk about those things. And again, thank you for your time on this. I mean, you've really worked through this thing on inclusion counts, and really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rick. Like I said, I mean, I'm very happy to participate. My agency loves doing stuff like this. The outreach stuff like this is really the fun stuff of our job. That's the fun part. Getting out there, and it's a little difficult now as far as the getting out there part, but being and interacting with the public for a lot of clients and a lot of people, especially small businesses, working with us here at the district office is their first interaction ever with a federal agency. So we do want that to be a positive one as as much as we can, and we're always happy to try and help as much as possible. And being involved with the City of Pittsburgh, this Inclusion Counts program, it's been excellent. I'm looking forward to many, many more of these sessions. And yeah, anytime you need anything from us, definitely let us know. And for the clients out there, I always kind of wrap up and sort of end everything with this. Don't ever feel like you're alone. There's a lot of great business resources here in Western Pennsylvania, not only at the SBA, but through our local government partners like the City of Pittsburgh, many of our other local economic development groups. We're always happy to help you and get you pointed in the right direction. So thank you so much, Rick.
All right. Thank you. And take care. And we'll see you next month.
All righty. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Hi, I'm Amaya Akwili. I'm recycling specialist with the City of Pittsburgh. Did you know the city collects your recycling every 2 weeks? In an effort to reduce contamination in the curbside recycling can, here's a quick guide on what can be recycled in the City of Pittsburgh. We take plastic and glass bottles, jugs, and jars, aluminum and steel cans, mixed paper such as cereal boxes, junk mail, and magazines, and cardboard. Please remember to empty and rinse all containers, remove and discard all lids and caps, flatten and bundle cardboard boxes, and place in another bin or box for collection. If you have any questions, please call 311 or go to pittsburghpa.gov and search residential recycling for more information. Thank you.
Welcome back to Inclusion Counts. I'd like to introduce our next guest, Dr. Melissa Burrows, Director of the Mayor's Office of Equal Opportunity for the City of Cleveland. Dr. Burrows joined Mayor Frank Jackson's administration in 2014. As director, she is responsible for monitoring and enforcing codified ordinances as a way of promoting equity and inclusion efforts throughout compliance to goals and promoting self-help. Her major functions include certifying businesses as local, minority, and female-owned, evaluating city contracts related to the use of minority and female businesses, employees, and local companies, determining goals and requirements for city contracts, monitoring of contractor compliance with various contract requirements, training on information for contractors and potential contractors, investigating and imposing penalties for failure to comply with office programs, providing technical support for target businesses and outreach. Prior to joining the Jackson's administration, Dr. Burrows served as the Faculty Diversity Officer at Case Western Reserve University, where she was responsible for providing oversight of university compliance with equal opportunity and affirmative action laws and regulations, as well as assisting with diversity and inclusion efforts. Additionally, Dr. Burrows worked at Key Bank as the Diversity Measurements Manager, where she was responsible for leading efforts in translating the value proposition of diversity and inclusion efforts on corporation and building the business case for diversity. Also, she's taught as an adjunct faculty at various institutions of higher learning. With that said, Dr. Burrows, welcome to Inclusion Counts.
Thank you very much, Rick.
How are you doing today in the wake of this horrible pandemic across the country?
You know, it's an interesting time. I mean, from a personal perspective, it can be a challenge, right? And the way that I've been able to balance that piece is really, I have a friend, and we gather our sons and we walk on a weekly basis, just outside, just to be able to create open space so we can keep our sanity. And then I would say from a professional perspective, it's been difficult, especially for our small businesses. So our small businesses, of course, businesses in general are suffering. And so the small businesses, the mayor continues to say, if we have another shutdown, the smaller businesses may not make it. And so it's really a piece around, or a challenge around, how can we help those small businesses and businesses in general so that they can stay alive in the wake of what's going on in terms of COVID.
It's funny, you must have been reading my notes here. That was kind of my next question. How's the city of Cleveland managing the outbreak? Yeah. And then what type of mandated precautions are in the space to keep the residents safe, but also how to keep your businesses going? So, what type of things have you done?
So the city of Cleveland, especially within our economic development department, we have small loans that individual businesses can actually, if they're interested in it, they can apply for those loans. One of the things that the mayor just tasked community development, economic development, and my department, Mayor's Office of Equal Opportunity, or OEO, is that we come together. And so economic development, they have the money in terms of the actual application process and the loan process. So they have a pot of money that they are able to loan to small businesses. My role, or my office's role, will be really around, it's not just enough to release the actual application. We may need to actually sit down and hold hands with those individual businesses and assist them with completing that application. So smaller businesses may not be as familiar with the administrative process, especially of municipal government. And my role will be to just try and help those businesses complete the application, whether that may mean sitting down with them virtually and helping them complete that application step by step. And then, of course, community development through the CARES Act, they received financial assistance and money so that they can help individuals stay within the residence in terms of rental assistance or money they may need just to stay in the location that they're currently in.
So the business pot of money is different, that you have to kind of adjust your process to help those businesses, that you were saying hand holding the different businesses and helping them complete the application. So I guess that's different from your normal procurement in your loan programs for the city.
Right. It's somewhat different. Just because this is a particular pool of money, and the mayor has instructed economic development to sort of broaden that perspective, diversify the people who actually receive the money. So I believe this is at least the second pool of money that the mayor has given for economic development to get out. And now we're trying to make sure that we reach as many businesses as possible. Some businesses may not have been aware of that money at first, or again, as the mayor has suggested, it could be that because of the administrative process of completing an application, they may not they need assistance. And I'll give you an example. A lot of times there's information that I can send out electronically through our systems, especially to our contractors, our certified contractors. And so I'll send that information out. And a perfect example is there was a young lady that called me this week and said, hey, I need help with this application. I see the application, but I don't even really know how to complete it. And so I told her, just call me back and we can set up time to go through that process one by one, because again, she thought potentially she could fill out the application, online, but it is, unfortunately, it's a hard copy. So there are certain variances, even with printing out the application. It could be that I may need to print out that application. And you asked about our public as well. The public is not allowed yet inside City Hall, but they can come to our guard gates, the security gate. And it may be that I will have to give her an actual hard copy of that application and put it in her hand versus she may not have access to a printer. And so it's those little nuances that can make or break whether or not individuals complete the process relative to additional assistance that they may need.
Yeah, that's interesting. We don't think about that. We assume that people have printers, and we assume that people have some of these things, right at their hands.
And that's not the case.
That's not the case.
Not the case.
And, have a lot of businesses came up and asked for the hard copy yet, or this is still rolling out
Still, still rolling out, so we don't know yet. In fact, the three departments, economic development, community development, OEO, we have a meeting later on this afternoon because the mayor tasked us with this in terms of the three departments actually working together to figure it out. So we have a meeting later on today to really dig in deeper and figure out where we can assist our small businesses. I always say small businesses because those are the ones that are at the point where this pandemic is hitting them the hardest, because they may have been at the point where, again, they were able to survive prior to the pandemic, but now that they've had to sort of readjust, it could be even, I even have another example. I'm reaching for it, but our Destination Cleveland, sort of our Chamber of Commerce to some extent, but it's Destination Cleveland in terms of come and visit the city. They have PPE kits. It is a kit that includes Pharrell and a face mask, and I have boxes of them. So this is another example where I need to get this out to our small contractors and even our just our businesses in general, because again, we know that there are times where acquiring face mask or even just these three little individual packages of Pharrell, that could be that could make a difference to individual contractors who in assistance with our small businesses. They may need this particular type of package. So we're working on a strategy to get that out too.
Yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. I mean, that's good. I wanted to ask you now, are you seeing like service-oriented businesses? I think service-oriented business could probably use that, like restaurants and salons and barbershops and those industries that really deal with the public coming in and out, even takeout, to provide that for the residents, but also the businesses as they're kind of having people come in and so forth. If they don't have a mask and they don't have, sanitizer, I mean, they could hand that out.
Absolutely.
Instead of denying entry. I know I was in the store the other day, the business owner was said, no mask, no service.
Right. Absolutely. That's a really good point.
It would be great to
like
have
that
something like that and saying, hey, I can serve you. You need to go back outside and put your mask on that I'm giving you here.
Right. And most importantly, it's very difficult for those business owners to turn away business. They don't want to turn away any business, but they need the protection just as the individual who's coming in there. All of us need the protection of this mask and the Pharrell as well. So good point.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good initiative. It'd be good for us to kind of look at that at the city as well, as businesses, have a supply of that. And hopefully we could get it on a large scale to be able to support our small businesses in that space.
Right.
I kind of want to kind of pivot a little bit because, as we were kind of prepping the other day, we know that you've did some innovative initiatives going on. And the economic development project that includes like highway, business development, and expansion in a certain part of the city. Can you explain to our audience of this particular like opportunity zone and what agencies are currently involved and how does it come about? How did it come about?
Sure. So I don't know exactly the year, but many years ago, it's almost one of those developments that you hear about in a city that long ago people were talking about this sort of development of a road, and the road was sort of in people's minds, but it now is really being built. So sometimes it takes a long time, but it finally reaches there. So we have a section in the city of Cleveland on the east side known as Opportunity Corridor, and it connects one of our major freeways or interstates, Interstate 77, and the roadway that's being built, known as Opportunity Corridor, it will connect the interstate into University Circle, so in a particular neighborhood. And the reason why that connection, when I say University Circle on the east side is the connection between, and what's there, it's our museums, it's our orchestra, it's also our two major hospital institutions. So, and I'm saying that because that means that and also Case Western Reserve University. So that particular area of University Circle is a major hub in terms of our workforce. And so the roadway is being built by Ohio Department of Transportation. So they are near the completion of that road, probably within the next 6 months. And once the road is built, the mayor always says, once ODOT, Ohio Department of Transportation, once they complete the road, their work is done. But as a city of Cleveland, what are we going to do to ensure that when we say opportunity, it's opportunity for whom? And because of that, then the mayor has tasked internally economic development, our planning department, and then again, my Office of Equal Opportunity, in terms of leading 3 internal committees. But those committees are staffed with both internal and external constituents. The planning is planning and infrastructure is the planning phase, or the planning committee. And then there's site selection and environmental, sort of the remediation component. And that's our economic development department. And then my area is the neighborhood economic impact and equity department, or division, committee. Let me explain just a little bit about those 3. So the site selection is sort of that environmental component. It's looking at all the land and property, because this was sort of an area of the city that was to some extent abandoned. And so here the roadway is being built in there. So there are there's land there that needs to either be cleaned up or purchased or acquired by that site selection and environmental committee. So they're sort of overseeing that piece. The planning and infrastructure, they're preparing the land and building out the land in terms of how do we make that area a neighborhood? So it's not just enough in terms of we're cleaning up the land. How are we going to now build housing? How are we going to make that to some extent a neighborhood of choice? How will we plan that area where there are businesses so that we can plan it to the extent that individuals who also work near the Opportunity Corridor, they can, as the mayor would say about the city of Cleveland, live, work, and play. How do we prepare that area? And then the Neighborhood Economic Impact and Equity Committee, we're sort of in the middle of all of this. From a planning and infrastructure, and more importantly, that site selection, they're thinking about the workforce, and more importantly, the building. How do we bring businesses into Opportunity Corridor? Which businesses will be selected to reside within Opportunity Corridor? From a neighborhood economic impact and equity, we want to make sure that the residents of Cleveland and that particular area, that they are considered part of that process, especially as relates to any future job opportunities or workforce opportunities. It's almost, is it the carrot or the horse? Is it the stick or the horse? Which one is it first? And it's a delicate dance because when businesses come in, we want to make sure that they know that the city of Cleveland, that we do have a workforce here that potentially could work in those businesses. And we don't want just dollar stores. And I'm not saying the dollar store in particular, but just we want meaningful waged jobs so that our residents can be employed and be able to provide opportunities for themselves and their families. And so the dance that my committee takes is how, if businesses need a workforce, what type of workforce do they need in terms of training? Because it's up to us, my committee, to then work with our workforce development department and say, hey, this particular company needs 20 people to work in their company. They need them to be trained on X. And so we have to, it's a lot, there's a lot of planning involved in this, but we have to ensure that the residents of Cleveland, that they are part of that process and included in that process, as opposed to being left on the sideline. And so that's what we're working on.
Now, what type of businesses are you looking at to bring into that corridor? And I guess what type of partnerships do you have with the local schools that are there? Because you mentioned the major universities, or you even reaching further down to the high schools?
Right. Okay, so That is part of one of our neighborhoods known as Fairfax Renaissance Development Corporation. That's the nonprofit that sits in that space, and they are active with helping us plan what's going on in that area as well. So as it relates to just overall space, one of the things right now that's we're looking at is that we also have undergone a branding strategy for that area. And the branding strategy will help with identifying and sort of soliciting what types of businesses will come in. The only business I can tell you right now, and it's part of the city of Cleveland, that we are locating, we are building our new police headquarters in that area. So we know that from the police headquarters that we will have jobs related to obviously law enforcement. So we know that's coming in. And then as it relates to schools, I think there's one school in the Fairfax neighborhood, local school. So I'm not really sure how much of a connection we're making with the schools, but I know that it is the entire process in the space. But the first component of that is the branding strategy. And we haven't decided which. We've been presented with 3 different proposed plans, but we have not made a final selection on that branding strategy.
And I guess, let's go back to housing. I mean, housing is the critical thing in any city. We have these challenges as far as the city of Pittsburgh. We have a housing opportunity fund to make it affordable for people to obtain housing in our area. Are you kind of looking at that same type of strategy in Cleveland?
We have one similar to that. Now I'm going to get it wrong, I think. But what exists right now, and it is again through Fairfax Renaissance Development Corporation, and it is a program that attracts people to live within Fairfax, which is again around that opportunity corridor area. And then it gives an incentive for individuals who either work at the university or that work at the hospitals to receive a down payment assistance. So we have something similar to that. And I'm sure because this is right in the same neighborhood, that within that particular space of opportunity corridor, the same program will be offered as well.
Wow. That's great. Because I think it's a housing shortage all over America right now.
Yes.
Trying to keep
interest rates are low, so this is the time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you figure interest rates are low, but also dealing with the pandemic, keeping people in their home as well, which is a tremendous challenge, I guess, for a lot of us in that space.
Yes.
I want to do kind of a slight pivot. We were both selected as far as our cities are concerned in a 10-city cohort sponsored by Living Cities and the CTI Foundation and Governing Magazine that focused on inclusive procurement. What projects have you developed and implemented from your involvement in the program?
Yeah, it's I have to say thank you to Living Cities, and really to say that it's been a pleasure being part of the cohort. And even beyond, the project that we're working on, it has been an honor to have connections through other cities, such as Pittsburgh, yourself. So the city of Cleveland, we years ago, and I really think this was part of the last disparity study that we had. So back in 2012, we had our last disparity study. And as part of that, one of the things that came out was the need for a small contract rotation program. So in other words, how do we rotate vendors and contractors within our particular programs and allow them the opportunity to work on contracts here within the city of Cleveland? And so we had an ordinance on the books, but we had never really utilized that particular ordinance. So we amended the actual ordinance, and the ordinance really is around for contracts, in this case, under $50,000. We will take a list of our small contractors, and small contractors for us are defined as making less than $3 million over a 3-year period. Those small contractors will be put on a list, and we will rotate that list in terms of the contractors and their ability to work on our particular city contracts. We have so we're piloting the program in our recreation centers. The recreation centers are getting ready to undergo rehabilitation. And we know that we need assistance with electricians, plumbers. We also need assistance with painters and people in terms of flooring as well. So carpet or any type of flooring. So we will take those smaller contractors, they're on a list, and then we will rotate those contractors and allow them the opportunity so that they can participate on the contract. We have started and amended the legislation so far. We've also had classes for those small contractors because we know that, again, it sort of gets back to what we talked about at the beginning, that smaller contractors may not know or have the administrative support that they need. So we've had online classes, virtual classes for them. I think that began probably in March or so. But at any rate, we know that smaller contractors, they need assistance with bonding, assistance with insurance, assistance with how to even acquire or, fill out information related to government contracts, working on that. How do they market themselves? And then also the biggest challenge that I've seen so far that smaller contractors have is on estimating how much it will cost them to do the work. They will a lot of times underbid because they'll have the cost, but they're not thinking about charging for their time as well. And lastly, when you work with the city and a lot of times with municipal governments, there's a checks and balance piece that occurs. And so we can't pay in 2 days. There's a whole process that we have to undergo. So allowing, as a small contractor, building in that time frame so that the smaller contracts can allow for that payment to occur. I don't know, the net may be 30, 60, I don't even know, even maybe 90 days. So one of the things internally that we're talking about is trying to make sure, and we've added that as part of the small contract rotation program, that we need to pay net within the 30 days. So that's one of the things.
Is that a pilot for you? Is that a pilot program for you in saying any contractor in this rotation will get paid net 30 versus 60, 90, and in some cases 120 days to get paid for work?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. So it's a pilot. So we're trying to work on it. The Commissioner of Public Works, who's overseeing this process, he keeps telling me now, I'm going to hold him to it. He keeps telling me that, hey, once it reaches my desk, I can make that payment. So putting it through Advantage and all those kind of things. So we have not started the actual pilot in terms of the implementation because we got delayed because of COVID. But I'm going to hold him to that because he keeps telling me that it can happen. So we're going to test it out through this pilot. Yes.
Yeah. So you're doing the pilot, and I guess you're unbundling the projects because I don't know how many rec centers you have in Cleveland, and you figure, certain vendors can work on various projects instead of having the same ones kind of work on all of them,
Right. Absolutely. Because the mayor's goal, so, you and I have talked about this, that last year, at the end of 2019, City of Cleveland had a Cleveland Resident Employment Law, Fannie Lewis Law, and it stated that for contracts, public improvement contracts, beginning at $100,000 and above, that those contracts were required and are required to have 20% of the total worker hours have to be comprised of Cleveland residents. And then of that 20%, 4% have to be 24% of that 20% have to be comprised of low income individuals. Well, last year, the state of Ohio told the city of Cleveland that we no longer, through a lawsuit, that the city of Cleveland could no longer enforce that ordinance on public improvement contracts. So we can still use it on our development contracts, which we have quite a few of those as well, but we can no longer use it on our public improvement contracts. And because of that, the mayor has suggested and informed us that we need to figure out another way. What can we still do to employ our Cleveland residents? Because his goal right now is to look at all of the landscape relative to what we, the city of Cleveland, internally can do to assist our contractors. So the example of, helping the contractors fill out the paperwork, getting down to that minutia, that is one example. But the mayor's goal is really, how can we create generational wealth? And at this point, creating generational wealth through procurement, working on different projects and contracts here within Cleveland.
Wow. I guess, we're running out of time a little bit. We're coming up on the hour. But I say to all my guests, especially the last guest, what does inclusion mean to you?
So inclusion means not using the same network that you had in the past. Inclusion means thinking sort of outside of your box, and to the extent that you can include others. And I say that meaning, let's just think of it from an example of a different job, or being able to apply for a job. It's not that I want you to give me the job. I want you to at least see and let me submit my resume so that I have an opportunity to compete as well. And so inclusion means that we're looking at it from the perspective of opening up and creating a level playing field so that everyone has the opportunity to compete on the same, in the same way.
Yeah, that's well said. And looking at your bio, and I know I was going to talk about it earlier, you worked in 3 separate entities. You worked in the corporate sector, you worked in the university sector, now you're in the government sector. Now, is it the same type of commonalities as far as inclusion is concerned in those spaces? Or would you say there's major differences?
I would say they're different, and I hope I'm saying this, and I'm probably leaving it more in relationship to the culture. So in corporate America, it was about the metrics and the numbers. How do we diversify the numbers? We know that, and not just diversify the numbers, but diversify the numbers in a strategy so that we can ensure that at the top of the house, all the way from the top of the house, all the way to the very bottom, that the numbers were people of color and gender, that there was a mixture, right? We want to make sure that there was a mixture of individuals throughout the entire organization, from an executive vice president all the way down to a custodian. At a university, someone told me that when I moved from corporate America, that the university would be more political than it was in corporate America. And I told them there's no way that could be true. And you know what? They were actually right. The reason why universities are more political is because each college in that university has their own structure and culture within a wider brand of a university. So I could not get the work done unless I understood the culture, but more important, of each of those 8 schools, at least at the university I was at. But I also then had to know and work with each of the deans of that college, because that college was run by the dean, and the dean is the one that set the tone within those 8 schools. Here within municipal government, there's a wider perspective. Of course, we have it from the mayor, but it is now looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it is still now taking it to each of the department heads and making sure that we have a mixture. And I'll just give you one more example because I know we're running out of time. So the mayor has tasked me with, now that we no longer have that Cleveland resident employment law, how do we control things internally? And here's just one example. I asked my purchases and supplies commissioner today, I said, hey, you all are really busy. The mayor has asked me to, find innovative ways that we can create, more diversity and, most importantly, generational wealth for our residents. What way can we think of something that's innovative that we can do within our purchasing department? And she said that, hey, you all have this system. We work with B2G now. In terms of the database of certifying our contractors and maintaining our contracts through monitoring. She said, if you could give each of the procurement leads, so within each of our departments, there's a person who's mainly responsible for purchasing, or at least keeping track of it. She said, we should give each of the procurement leads the ability to have access to B2G now, because they can look through and identify certified contractors who may be able to be put on the list to potentially bid for contracts. And I'm like, and these are for contracts under 50. We already do it at $50,000 and above, but now we're going to focus on below $50,000. Again, so we can diversify that pool of potential contractors, because otherwise, here we go. We're doing business and relying on people that we've used over and over again, but we need to be able to diversify that pool as well.
Wow. Thank you again. I mean, for being upfront and very frank about your experiences. It's kind of refreshing, so to speak, to hear someone in the government space to really being honest about the different processes that you're going through as you're doing them. Thanks for being a friend to me.
Thank you.
And a cross state, I guess a cross city collaborator.
Just 2 hours away.
and mentor to me in my space since I've started here in the mayor's office here. So we may be tapping into you. I mean, there's been a lot of discussions about Cleveland's model and your leadership and how you're moving things. So
anytime.
You won't be a stranger to us.
That's great.
You definitely won't be a stranger to Inclusion Counts. We'll probably have you back on talking about some other aspects that you're doing in the future. So again, stay safe.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you. And take care now.
Okay, you too. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.